Hi, everybody. I'm Jay. You might have seen me in some past skincare and makeup workshops I've done with Plume. And today we're doing a practice session. So that's exactly what that sounds like. I'm not going to be like lecturing so much per se, but we'll all be working on whatever it is we want to do with our makeup today. And I saw that somebody said they don't have any products to work with. So for anybody who has little to no makeup at all, you're still welcome to stay. And some people have their cameras on. So, if anything, this is a fun way to just see what everyone does for their routine. I can also answer questions too if you don't have products because you're just not sure where to start. But I would definitely recommend attending another one of my makeup workshops in the future because I go over techniques and products more in depth. But today, I wanted to do like a fall theme for inspiration. If you don't have colorful makeup, no worries. I think that we can still draw inspiration for makeup, even in like lines and forms or the mood. So I am praying for fall. It is like 90 degrees where I am. I'm suffering. So I'm gonna trick my brain into thinking it's much cooler outside. On the left of this slide, you'll see a couple diagrams. These are in the slides that I show for my makeup workshops. The top diagram is gonna be a more masculine eyebrow shape versus a more feminine eyebrow shape for anybody who wants to play with those techniques today. And then under that is a chart of where to place highlight or a lighter color or concealer, contour, which is a little bit darker. You could also use a bronzer if you have that, as well as a little bit of blush if that's what you're into. And the left side is the masculine version, right side is feminine version. So just a visual representation of something you can try, especially if you've never tried it. Today is the day for that. So feel free to go on camera if you feel comfortable doing so, because I would just love to see what y'all are up to. And you can ask me questions as you're playing around today. There's really no pressure because it's just us, right? Um, this is just so that it's like body doubling, but there's 26 of us. So hopefully this is gonna give you the encouragement you need to start playing around with makeup. And I will be putting on makeup alongside everybody as well. If I miss any questions that come up, Lena will just let me know. I'll answer those as we go. But yeah, if you have any makeup products, make sure they're in front of you and let's get started. However it is you want. You don't even have to follow my inspiration if you don't like autumn for whatever reason. I'm not gonna press you on that. It's okay. I respect your decisions. But yeah, let's start. And while I put on a face primer, which is basically what you put on before your foundation or face makeup, I'll answer a couple of the questions that have already come up here. So somebody asks, any brand of eyeshadow that's the best? So with makeup, with a lot of things in life, honestly, I get this question a lot, like what blank is the best? And everything is so different for everybody. In my opinion, whatever you want to use and what you like to use and what is accessible to you is the best for you. What is the best to me, you might not really like. But if I were to suggest a few brands of eyeshadow, I genuinely really like the ones that are from a certain Chinese beauty brand. You can only get it online, unfortunately, but I have a bunch of these kind of palettes from them, and they have different color themes depending on what you're into. This is called Cheery Ep, Cheeryep. I can put that in the chat for anybody who wants to kind of like look into that more. But that's probably my favorite at the moment. I've tried a lot of different eyeshadows. I've definitely started off in the drugstore. I really like the Wet and Wild ones, honestly, and they're under 20 bucks. So I think if you see a palette or an eyeshadow in stores and it's intriguing to you, try it out, especially if it's from the drugstore. Another brand I like is NYX or NYX Cosmetics. They're pretty affordable and they have a ton of options, whether you're more into like nude or neutral colors, or if you want to try some bright, vibrant shadows. So those are a couple recommendations for eyeshadow. And then somebody said, I'm a much older trans femme who's just starting to transition. My brows have lost hair over the years and they're too short to show an arch or reach past the top of my eye. What can I do to make them look realistically longer? That is a great question because I have no eyebrows. So I know a thing or two about building a brow from very little. Um, so if if it's that your hairs are sparse and they're short, you're gonna want to use a brow pencil, a brow powder, and then another thing to make them look more realistic is a brow pen. So you don't need all three. Again, NYX has some really great options for these, but what I like to do is just draw in the shape with a powder, or you can use a pencil like this. This one is really, really thin, but you can get one that is a little bit thicker so you don't sit there for so long just filling them in. And then a brow pen is basically like a liquid eyeliner almost, but you use this to draw on little hair-like strokes. And usually the brow pen will be a little bit darker than the powder or the pencil that you use so that it adds a little bit of depth and dimension. So I would say if you can see any kind of brow shape naturally, try to follow that when you're filling them in with a pencil or powder. And then once you're done, you're happy with the shape and the thickness of the brow, you can then go in and do these hair-like strokes with a brow pen, or you could even use a brow pencil, kind of press a little bit harder so it shows up darker. And exactly like how I did it on my hand, where it's kind of spaced out. That's how you'll mimic the appearance of brow hair. As long as you're using more than just one color, it's gonna look less flat and like makeup-y. So that's why I encourage using a couple different products for that. It takes a lot of practice, but if anything, this little brow diagram is a good way to kind of see like, okay, well, what should the shape look like if there's not a lot of shape to work with? And then if you really have no brows, you can look up brow mapping diagrams because that's going to show you how long the length of the eyebrow should be. Basically, you take with a stick. You can use a pencil, whatever it is that you have. You line it up with the outer part of your nostril straight up in line with your inner corner of the eye. And that will tell you the eyebrow should start right about here. You take that same pencil or whatever it is you're using, and while you're looking straight forward, you kind of line that up with the outside of your is it pupil iris? I forget. The outside part of your eye, and then that'll show you where the arch or the highest part of the brow should be. And then same thing, you're keeping that anchor at the outside of your nose, line it up with the outer corner of your eye, and that's about where the end of your brow should be. And that's a really good technique, even if you have brows, just to see like if I wanted to really build a brow or if you're gonna get your eyebrows done or something, you can fill them in according to that guideline and it'll give you an idea of what, where everything should be. So try that out. Try that out. So I already put on some primer. I already have skincare on. I've talked about this in the makeup workshops that I've led before, but if you're gonna do makeup, especially face makeup, it is so important that you at the very least use like a moisturizer, something that will help to balance out your skin so that it's not super dry, or if you have oily skin, a really, really lightweight moisturizer or even a hydrating face serum of some sort is a good base for your makeup. Otherwise, your makeup is gonna kind of cling to any flakiness or patchiness or texture on the skin, and that is what tends to make makeup look a little bit more obvious. So I've already got my moisturizer. I put on a face primer, which helps because I am a little bit oilier. And then I have my foundation or skin tint on the back of my hand. I like to use a little sponge. You can find these online. They're mainly used in like Asian cushion foundations. And I just find that it's super quick to just smack my face a million times to get this foundation on. You can use a brush if that's what you have. You could also use like a usual makeup sponge or just your fingers if you don't have anything else. There's a lot of ways that you can do your makeup. There's no right or wrong way. Um, if you hear people say like, "Oh, don't use this for your makeup," don't listen to them. Do not listen to them. Just do what you want, do what makes you happy, and do what makes sense for you. It's just good to know the difference between different tools or products or the finish of your products as well. Just so you can achieve a certain effect, whatever that is that you're going for. Someone said, would you put eyeshadow primer on at the same time as face primer or closer to when you start eyeshadow? I would personally put it on right before I put on my eyeshadow. And typically, I would do eyeshadow before my face makeup, just because sometimes when you're working with shadows, especially if they're a little bit darker, you'll get a little fallout and the shadow will kind of go under your eyes. It's just easier to not have any face makeup on yet, so you don't have to fix it or it doesn't get mixed in with your concealer or your foundation. But yes, eyeshadow primer, I do put it on right away, especially because my eyes are pretty oily. They're hooded as well, which means this part of my eye on the top, it goes over the part of my movable eyelid, which means there's a lot of friction. If you have more open eyes, you don't experience makeup smudging on you all the time with your eye makeup. Things are a lot easier for you, and I'm a little bit jealous, but it's fine. It's fine. We can't control how we're born, right? But that is why I have to consider how long something has been sitting on my eyes because that plays into how long it'll last throughout the day. And I will kind of like show y'all how I would do an eyeshadow look. That's something I haven't touched upon yet in my other makeup workshops, just because I've been showing a lot of contouring and I've even done like my eyebrows on camera before. But now you get to see how I do my eye makeup, which is arguably the most fun part of makeup. At least I think so. And I'm just gonna quickly do some highlighting and contouring similar to that diagram on the left side of this slide we're on right now. I'm using a lighter concealer. This goes in the areas that I want to appear closer to the viewer. So these are gonna pop forward. And for contouring or bronzing, that's a way to add more depth and kind of bring out your bone structure. So I'm gonna use something for that. This is a contour. It's like a liquid contour. There's powders, there's creams and sticks and stuff. It all is preference, honestly. I just do a lot of things. You don't have to do every step I'm doing because I'm a little bit extra. But I feel like a liquid or a cream product is just easier to blend out than a powder. You can use a powder if you want to do contouring. It's a great way to play around with your face structure and kind of like alter how it looks. But I just feel like sometimes powders can be a little like patchy. It depends on the product, of course, and it depends if you have any foundation or makeup underneath your powder. But I do like to go for a cream or a liquid like this one because I just feel like it's a lot quicker and you get more color payoff with that. And I'm just kind of following where my I can naturally feel my cheekbone. You could even touch your cheek if you're not sure where it is. And you just apply your contour or your bronzer right along that area. I would recommend not putting it below your cheekbone because it does kind of drag down your features a little bit. Okay, somebody said NYX makes an affordable contour and highlight stick I really like. They make a lot of good stuff and it's drugstore makeup, so I don't believe anything should be over like $20. Most things from them are like 15 and under, so it's a great brand to start with if you're just playing around and you're not really sure what you love and whether or not you want to invest in something fancier. The NYX Pro Fix sticks are great too. Are those the concealer sticks? Because I've seen those. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so concealer is something that you can use. If you don't want to put something all over your face, you're not really into the feeling of foundation, but you want to even out your skin tone, you can just use a concealer on the areas that you feel like you need it the most. A lot of people will just do like under their eyes or maybe to cover blemishes. And even that can make a really big difference, especially if you're going to do eye makeup too, just so it doesn't distract the eye from whatever fancy makeup you got on your eyeballs. Because sometimes our skin is, has a lot of colors naturally, which is not a bad thing. But visually, if we want the focus to be on the eyes or the lips, we want to cancel out some of the other colors going on. I'm just blending everything out using a brush. And you can notice I'm doing more tapping motions. You might see people who like to use brushes and like buff them in circles, which is not wrong or bad, but I like to tap if I want to keep that color. If I want to keep the coverage of that, if I don't want to just kind of blend everything all together to the point where I can't see the difference between the brighter concealer and a contour, then the tapping is just a good way to apply your makeup and have more control over where it goes. And then I feel like you don't have to use so much makeup because you're not just rubbing it all off with like that vigorous buffing motion. But there's a time and place for everything. And yeah, I really encourage that y'all play around with different tools.
So we
Okay,
have two questions in the Q&A box.
okay,
One, like, what do you think of threading for shaping? And then one about primer, like, how much primer should we use?
okay. So threading, in terms of like for your eyebrows or even facial hair, it's just one technique. There's threading, there's waxing, there's tweezing. Um, they are all ways for you to clean up the eyebrow shape. It's just it depends on the person doing it. There is a there's a very popular perception that I've heard from a lot of clients I've done eyebrow waxing for. They think that getting your brows waxed or your brows threaded will make them thinner, but it's more so the people who are doing the eyebrow threading, they maybe prefer thinner eyebrows and they're kind of projecting their preferences on you when they do your eyebrows. That's why it's a really good idea, like I said earlier, to try and do that eyebrow mapping, where you're kind of finding all the different points of your brow and filling your eyebrows in only in those areas, because that's a way for you to see if you like that. And that's a way for you to know, like, okay, maybe this is a little too thin. If I fill them in a little thicker, how does that look? Like, do I like that or do I want my eyebrows to be a little thinner? So threading is not inherently bad. It always comes down to whatever that person is doing, but it also depends on what you tell them. Same with haircuts and stuff. Same with getting your makeup done. If you're not really sure exactly what you want, the person doing your service can only do so much, and we can't read minds, unfortunately, as much as I'd love to. That would make my job a lot easier when doing people's makeup or skincare. But yeah, threading is fine. It works. For some people, it's more painful because like I've gotten my eyebrows threaded when I used to have eyebrows. And you can feel and like hear every hair coming out, which is a little unsettling. Unless you like that, but who am I to say? Waxing is quicker in my opinion. It's just a couple passes and I could be done with the eyebrow wax real quick. Um, it might be a little bit less precise, but I really do think it's up to the person. So,
So I
and
have
the
a
other,
follow-up on that, Jay.
yes.
I'm curious what you think about microblading.
So similar kind of concept of it depends on the person. There are so many different styles of microblading, which for those people who don't know, it is a tattoo. Basically, you're getting your eyebrows drawn in, and it's not like a permanent tattoo because it'll eventually fade. But it's great for people who don't have a lot of hair or just in general, if you don't like to do your eyebrows every time you do your makeup, if you get microblading done, that's just like one step that you don't have to worry about in your routine. I've seen great microblading and I've seen not so great microblading. Depends on the person and their taste and preference, um, and the techniques that they learn because it's a very wide open field for that. But I think it can be a great option for a lot of people. You just want to do your research and like really look into the style of the person you're considering. If it ever, if the price is ever like sounds too good to be true, it is. It is. Absolutely, it is. It's just a fact, you know, if you're like, wow, $20 microblading, well, that's what you're gonna get. That's exactly what you're gonna get. Okay, and then I see another question about primer. How much primer should you use? You want to get a thin layer on. It depends on your skin type, but if you are very oily, chances are you're not oily on your cheeks as much as you are like your nose and your forehead. So with a mattifying primer, similar to the one that I used before this, just to help dull down some shine and kind of stop that oil from coming through. I don't use too much because it kind of dries down as you blend it into the skin. And if you put on too much product, you can actually kind of see where it is, or it'll mess with your foundation and whatever else you put on top. But if you're using like a hydrating primer, if you have very dry skin and you need that extra help to get the product to glide on smoothly and sit nicely on the skin, I don't think you can necessarily put on too much. But yeah, nice thin layer is good to aim for. But I feel like it's not usually a concern unless you are using a primer that is for like oily skin. Then you'll be able to kind of see it or tell that it's too gunked up. All right, so I got some contour and highlighting done. This is just the base here, but it is really helpful to do. Some people have this idea that natural makeup, like looking like you don't have makeup on, people think that means less products or a less amount of makeup on the skin. And that is not true. When you put on a foundation, that's one color. Our skin naturally has a lot of different colors. So if we erase our features with just a foundation, but we don't use a bronzer, we don't use any highlight, we don't use any blush, that actually can make your face look like you have makeup on because it's almost like a mask. It has no dimension, it has no depth. So you don't have to do like a full glam look if that's not your thing, but consider, you know, the fact that naturally our skin is a little more tan where we get the most sun. So on the tops of our foreheads, you can even do like along your jaw if you want to soften or if you want to make it look more angular. You can do a little bit of bronzer on your nose, even just to give your skin some variation in color. Otherwise, it does kind of look a little flat. And yeah, makeupy. Just don't be scared to use it. But you can always add more makeup on. It's a little harder to try to blend everything out and save everything if you put on way too much bronzer or way too much contour or blush. So yeah, just put on a little bit at a time, and then you'll figure out over time how much you like for yourself and what feels right to you. But I definitely recommend if you have been kind of scared of using more color in your makeup, try it out because you'll see the huge difference that it makes. It's like night and day, honestly. Okay, so this is the base. What I like to do, if you have very dry skin, you can use a really hydrating setting spray, or even if you have like a skincare mist that's hydrating, you can put that on after you put on your foundation and everything. And what that's gonna do is just give you a thin layer of hydration. If you have oily skin, you can use a mattifying setting spray, like I have this one from Maybelline. This is just gonna help your makeup last even longer and help to prevent that oil from like really breaking down your makeup throughout the day. Just a little something. I like to do this and I like to kind of let it dry before I put on some powder. I just feel like it makes the powder look less dry as well. Okay, someone said, my face gets quite red around my cheeks and eyes, while the rest of my face is usually quite pale. Should I aim for a heavier covering for those sections or a different color? That's a really good question. What I would try to do is If you're gonna use a concealer you could just use that on certain areas, doesn't have to go all over the face. The concealer shade can match the rest of your face that isn't red, so that when you conceal those reddish areas, it'll make sense. It'll be more seamless with everything else. You might have seen products called color correctors. They come in like green and yellow and purple and orange. Those are supposed to help to cancel out really obvious discoloration. So if you have red and if you are more pale, I would recommend trying out a very, very pale green color corrector and only apply it on the areas that are more red. I think I have one, but I don't know where it is right now. NYX has one that is pretty pale. I would look into that. Or if you can't find one that's very pale, if you can just find like a regular green corrector, you can mix that in with the concealer that matches your skin tone. And then you can use that on those red areas. Just because sometimes you'll put a concealer over a lot of redness and you might still see redness coming through. That's what the color corrector would do. But try that, try it out, and see if, which technique you feel like makes the most sense for you. You just don't want to still look green with the color corrector, so just use as much as you need. Only as much to cancel out the red, and then you can go on top of that with your concealer that matches your skin tone. So hopefully that was helpful. Somebody said, love the fan. Thank you. I got it for like $5. I love it. I use it all the time and I always show it off. Everyone should have one. I wish I could give everybody in this Zoom today a free fan and we could all match each other, but unfortunately, I don't have that. I don't have that power. And now I'm just setting my liquid and cream products with some powder. Again, I do tend to have oilier skin, so this is crucial. I could never walk out the door with makeup on if I don't set it with powder because it's gonna melt off in 2 seconds. And even if you have drier skin, if you feel like your makeup just kind of like fades away throughout the day or it slips and slides on your skin, a powder can help to keep that in place because it's gonna help to dry down the creams and liquids that you use. Some people are scared of powders, especially if you have drier skin, but not all powders are equal. Some of them are going to be better for oily skin, and some are actually pretty good for dry skin. It won't accentuate any dryness or flakiness on the skin. If I were to recommend one for each kind of skin type, the one that I'm using today is the one size translucent powder. The lid is this pink lid. Um, this is my favorite powder. I feel like it does an amazing job at blurring my skin. It kind of like helps to smooth out the appearance of texture, which in general powders do that. But this one specifically is really good if you have oily skin. Even if I use it under my eyes, which is the thinnest part of your face, it doesn't accentuate or create texture that's not there, which I really, really like because other powders are a little bit heavy. And if I were to recommend a powder for dry skin, the Hourglass powder, you can find it at Sephora and Ulta, probably some other places too. The Hourglass powder is a really popular option because it's more finely milled. It's not going to look as matte as the one I have on, and it still helps your skin look like skin. Kind of still leaves some dimension so it doesn't just look really makeupy, and it's not too heavy or too dry for dry skin. So yeah, not sponsored, just genuine recommendations based off of what I've tried on other people, or just what I know from my experience working in beauty. But I love powder. I don't think I could ever live without it. I use a lot of it. And then for under the eyes, I'm just using this little triangle powder puff. You can get a lot of these for real cheap online. You can definitely use like a fluffy brush, like how I used a bigger brush for the rest of my face. If you were to use a sponge like this, you can just kind of pack it on a little bit more. And because it's flat, I'm also kind of evening out that concealer. Sometimes a brush I find can leave like streaks in my makeup. Okay, love to see everyone's working on something. Okay, okay, someone's doing some eyeshadow. All right. And yeah, let me know if y'all have any questions. And even if you're not working on your makeup at the moment, if there's anything you just ever were wondering about in regards to makeup, I know a thing or two. Okay, so someone said, I haven't had my facial hair removed yet. Soon, but not yet. Um, so I can get a very close shave, and I like the way a slightly heavier application of foundation helps it look more natural. Should I use a red concealer to help to stop the bluing effects of a longer day in makeup? So you're on the right track. This is going back to what I was talking about with color correcting. If you are trying to counteract blue, the opposite color of blue on the color wheel is orange. If your skin is light, you don't want to go for like an orange. I would not recommend red necessarily either because you want the color corrector to match the depth of tone of your skin. So like how I was telling somebody earlier who said they have pale skin but they have redness, you want to use a pale green, not a dark green, to color correct redness on pale skin. So yes, you can use an orangey or peachy color corrector. If you have really, really deep skin, then a red would make sense. But if your skin is more light, then go for like a light kind of orange. If your skin is medium, you can go for a fuller orange color. Um, and that definitely helps a lot with making sure that area doesn't look blue throughout the day. You might want to play around with that though. And I know a lot of people really like to use cream products or like sticks sometimes. Sometimes they kind of just stay on the skin better, although they are a little bit thicker depending on which one you get. But yes, that's the kind of technique that you would use if you want to prevent the kind of appearance of blue peeking through your makeup throughout the day. Okay, so we got the face base done. I'm gonna move on to eyeballs. So yeah, I don't talk much about eyes, but I live for eye makeup. I feel like it's the most fun part of makeup. And in my opinion, eye makeup kind of goes either way in terms of like gender or all the way around in gender. And there are ways that you can still do eyeshadow and even use like shimmers or glitters without feeling like you're doing very feminine makeup. So that's kind of what I'm going to show you today. I'm going to go in first with an eyeshadow primer. The point of a primer is to create that thin layer between your skin and the makeup. It'll help your makeup stick better. It'll help the color of your eyeshadows be more vibrant, especially if you get an eyeshadow primer that has a little bit of color to it, or some people will use concealer just to kind of lay down a base for your eyeshadows. And I have to do a really, really thin layer. Otherwise, it's gonna kind of gunk up and it will actually cause my makeup to crease. I'm using the Urban Decay on what's it called? I was gonna say something else that's not right. This is the eyeshadow primer potion, which fun fact, it's one of the first products I had ever purchased from Sephora when I was like 13. Was a primer potion from them, even though I didn't even have eyeshadows to play with. I just wanted to feel grown up. I just wanted to get something. But it's funny because I have always been really into eye makeup. Liquid eyeliner was my very first makeup product when I could afford the $6 or $7 pen from Walgreens. And yeah, I've never turned back ever since. So that's a way to tell y'all, anyone who feels the need to have like a bunch of makeup products when you're first starting, you don't really need all that. You just need to start at whatever area is most interesting to you. If you are really interested in lipstick, go for lipstick. You don't have to do a full face if you just want to wear lipstick. There's no one stopping you. I don't like when people try to make up rules for makeup or for gender that don't exist. So yeah, try not to limit yourself when you're playing around with makeup because it really is just what you make of it. See what I did there? Sorry. I'm so sorry. I apologize. I accidentally put on the primer, kind of splotchy, so I'm starting over. I took it off. But I really like this primer because it kind of dries down on the eyes. Some primers will kind of stay slippery. And if you have dry eyes, that works great. But like I said, I have oily skin. My eyes are oily and they're also hooded. I do need something that will set down. Otherwise, it's gonna immediately cause my eyeshadow to crease. And I really have to get the priming step right as well because that's the base. If it's not even and if it's not completely blended, then it will make my eyeshadow look a little splotchy. Okay, so eyelids are primed, and then I'm gonna use the inspo picks I put on this slide here. I'm really going off the colors. Like you don't have to worry again, you don't have to do every color that's on here. It's just so you kind of get some inspiration, get some vibes and feels off of this. I think a great way to be able to do makeup, eye makeup, and still have it look masculine or still have it be gender affirming is the colors that you choose make a really, really big difference. So part of why I chose the autumn theme was it was kind of somebody else's idea, but also I feel like this kind of color palette is it's not super feminine. It's pretty grungy. That's another term you can look up if you're trying to find makeup inspo. Just like grungy makeup. It's not super glam. It's not super glittery. It's not any of that. But these kind of colors, I feel whenever I wear this, I do feel like it's more of that masculine vibe. So I'm using this palette, but again, you can use what you have even if you don't have a bunch of makeup, get creative with it. You'd be surprised what you can do with whatever you have at home. Even if you have a brown eye, like eyebrow pencil, you can use that as your eyeshadow or you can use it as an eyeliner. You only have a hot pink and dark purple. Honestly, love that combination. Play around with that. And it's also about the placement. You don't have to put them all over your eyes. You can literally just put like a little highlight on the inner corner or something, or just under your eyes if you want. There's so many ways to honestly go about that. And I see we're kind of getting at the 45-minute point, which is wild. Time is not real. I'm gonna quickly throw on this eye look for y'all just to give you an idea of what that can look like and kind of like the steps that I take. I love the Uhura purple I saw. I am not familiar. I'd love to see what you mean. If you have a picture or something you can drop. Ooh, I want to see the transformation. Oh, wow, you work fast. You work real fast. But it's also because I'm talking and doing all these things, but I love it. I love a vampy, kind of like gothy look always. I definitely feel like more alternative styles are often not super gendered. So that's something to explore if you haven't already. I'm not using any primer or anything. I bought the dark purple oh, to go to a goth event. That's funny because Lena's going to a goth event too. Everyone's going to goth events except for me. Obviously, I'm doing something wrong. I don't know enough goths.
I can introduce you to a bunch.
I'm sure you can. And we could just do each other's makeup.
Are you saying you'd let me do your makeup, Jay?
Honestly, why not?
Let's go for it.
Let's see what you got. I'm basically just doing like a smoky eye, which means the eyeshadow gets a little darker the closer it is to your eye, but it blends out smoothly outwards. And that is a great kind of eye look to go for where if you don't want it to be like you want to do a wing liner or something, you want to lean too feminine with it. All matte smoky eyes, so no shimmer or any glitters. A perfect gender neutral eye look, in my opinion. or just eyeliner is great. You can do eyeliner just on the bottom if you want. That'll make your eyes look more bottom heavy, which is a cool kind of way to play around with your features. But yeah, just super quick, just two eyeshadows. You don't need to have an entire palette. It's just about how much you put, because when you blend out an eyeshadow, you're kind of diluting the color, but you can keep deepening that same color with the same eyeshadow and just apply more and more until it gets to the intensity that you're looking for. Yeah. And then to make this a little bit more fall-esque, I'm gonna use kind of like this. There's like a couple yellows in here, but I think I'm gonna try this yellow. And when you're using different brushes for any part of your face, whether it's eyes or face, a looser brush, a bigger, fluffier, looser brush applies less product. It doesn't apply the color as intensely versus using a very dense and like a short bristled brush. And that's just like an easy way to know what brush is meant for what exactly.
We've got another question in the Q&A box. So speaking of facial hair coverage, still working on getting it removed, but this time it's pretty much white or gray. What would the recommendation be to counter that?
Like the hairs themselves are white or gray.
Yeah, I think that's the question.
Hmm. Mm. So if they're lighter, I feel like if you use a heavy enough foundation, you can kind of conceal it that way, especially if the foundation is more like a stick, because that's kind of what like drag queens use. Stick foundations, like the Krylon TV stick is a very popular one. But if you were to apply that in a downward motion, you could lay down those hairs, and that can kind of minimize the appearance. But if you buff, you could lift them and make them stick out more. But if you're able to shave them at all, I don't know if you have to keep them there for the next time you do like your hair removal treatment or whatever. Yeah, that's what I would do just to kind of hide them. Do you have any tips for people who have sensory issues and aren't used to the feeling of a lot of product on their face? And how to like adjust? So I would say start small. If you hate the feeling of any makeup on your face, don't do a full face right away. Play around with just lips. How does that feel? And also there's different textures in makeup. Not everything feels as heavy or as sticky or as slippery as some other products. So give yourself the space to like play around and experiment with that. And honestly, sometimes you just don't like it. And that's okay. I don't think anyone has to wear makeup at all, especially if you cannot stand the feeling of makeup on your face all day. It is a lot. But I mean, like, for me, I've been doing this for so long that I have gotten used to it. So it just takes some time and it takes experimentation. But don't give up if you really, really want to try to wear makeup, but you're just like, I hate the feeling. There are so many products on the market. If you have a bad experience with one brand or one product, just know there are so many other ones that you can try out, and you can definitely find something that you can tolerate a lot better. So I would recommend looking at reviews for products and seeing how people describe the texture. If you find a product that you really hate the feeling of, kind of like describe it. What is it that you hate about it, or what is uncomfortable about that product specifically, and then avoid other products that might have a similar texture. I don't think you necessarily need to not try it all. Ooh, okay. I see the purple that you're talking about. Well, I that's so pretty. It looks like a very simple eye look, but there's dimension to it. There's a slight kind of sheen, especially in that low lighting. So I'm gonna guess that's like a satin eyeshadow or a shimmer. Looks like they use like maybe two or three different shadows there, but that's really pretty. Did you say you found a purple that matches that, like another eyeshadow that matches that? Oh, sorry. I don't. I think your mic's muted right now.
No, I didn't, but I'd be excited to do so, and it was on the lids mostly.
Yeah, that would be great if you can find one that looks like that on you. I feel like I'm sure you could find something similar. It's a very flattering way of incorporating color to the eye makeup without it being like super bright rainbow. Kind of like more purpley tones or mauve is a great way to add a pop of color there. If you over apply or one side is different from the other, how would you correct it or remove the excess to start over without removing everything? It happens. It happens. So what I like to do is it depends on the kind of product. If it's a powder that you put way too much of, that is really easy to remedy because you can just put your translucent powder on top and kind of like buff it away. It won't completely remove it, but that's kind of the point. You don't want to take off your base or you don't want to, mess everything else up. So using a powder over that and just buffing and buffing to kind of subdue the color helps a lot in a pinch. If it's like a cream, you might actually be able to like take it off, honestly, because it's still slippery. It has some moisture to it. You could even use like a Q-tip or something more precise and just only wipe it off from that one area. If it's eye makeup, you might have to kind of start over on just the eyes. You just don't have to remove your whole face, but it's definitely happened to me plenty of times.
I just used my wine colored glitter lipstick because that's all I had.
I mean, I love that because lipsticks, you can use that on your cheeks as well. Some people might use them on the eyes. That's iffy because some products might move and irritate the eyes. But if you have like a cream lipstick, that is a perfect like multitasker. Even if you have a more corally kind of lipstick, you can try that as a color corrector too. Something to think about and try. Okay. I mean, this is kind of what I got time to do today, but we got a full face. We got some eyeshadow. It's definitely more of that like grungy, kind of warm tone, but also kind of vampy color combo that I find to be so gender affirming for me personally. If anyone want to ask any last questions before we're leaving this space today, or you feel like you're makeup pros now and you don't need my help?
A pro who still welcomes your help. That, yeah. Well, thank you so much for this, Jay. I see we got another question here in the chat. Any tips on applying tube lipstick without smearing?
Some lipsticks are matte, some of them are satin or creamy. The creamier it is, the more likely it is to smudge and smear. So if you do have a creamy lipstick, what you can do after you put it on is blot your lipstick a little bit with a little tissue. You've probably seen people do just a little kiss on the tissue. That's going to absorb excess moisture and oils. Some people will even put a little bit of a translucent face powder on top of the lipstick so it doesn't move around as much, the same way you would do for the rest of your face makeup. What's the most effective thing you can do to make the face look more feminine? I feel like playing around with blush, adding blush, even if it's just a little bit, it doesn't have to be bright red, putting that blush around kind of like the center of your face. Not here, but closer to your eyes here. It adds a fullness to the area that you use your blush. So I feel like blush is great, and also doing your eye makeup in a more lifted manner, so doing more of this upward shape with your eyeshadow or liner is also a great way to add a little bit of feminization. Do you have a chart to show which brush is used for what? Um, I don't have a chart for that, but there is a really good post I included on my other slides. It's called, I think it's like Makeup Brush 101. I wish I could remember the website for you, but they basically break down the shape of a brush or the like what kind of bristles and what it's meant for. Or there's a lot of resources out there, honestly. Probably a really good video where somebody kind of gives you examples on what to use which brush for what. So hopefully you're able to find that and learn through there. But um, a lot of makeup stuff, you can break the rules. So if you can have it do something you want to do that other people say it's not supposed to do it.
And we
Okay.
probably have time for one more question.
Yeah, let's see. What exactly do you mean by doing eye makeup in a more lifted manner? So if you if you were to blend out your eyeshadow, right? Like the way that I did it, you can see how it stays very close to my eye. But if I were to apply it and smoke it out or blend it outwards and more upwards, it adds more of a feminine look. Basically, feminine is typically very diagonal and like very upwards and lifted, and a more masculine kind of makeup look can even do the opposite. It might go down, or a masculine eye look is wearing eyeliner just on the bottom, which doesn't lift your eyes. It actually makes them look heavier on the bottom. So hopefully that makes sense. But if you look up lifted eye makeup or winged eyeliner, winged eyeshadow, you'll see what I mean.
Cool. Well, Jay, thank you so much for this. This is a really helpful space. I love that like we got to practice together. It might not have looked like I was doing anything, but I was doing my nails the whole time. So I guess that counts as makeup. Um, Before we close out, I'm just going to rewind the slides a little bit here to remind you of our upcoming events. In September, coming up, we've got an event on everything you need to know about access to healthcare. I'll be leading a webinar on overcoming trans imposter syndrome and growing confidence. We'll have another webinar on trans skincare tips. Is that you, Jay? Yeah, so
Sure.
Jay will be back. So come hang out with them again. On In October, we'll have advanced planning documents and a cool discussion on the relevance of queer sci-fi. And then you can also check out all of our peer support groups. We got Trans Femme, Trans Mask, BIPOC, Building Community, and Not Listed, 40 plus, and Neurodivergent. Those are for our members. So one last thing. Again, if you want to scan the QR code to take the post-event survey, it's always super helpful. The feedback is definitely, essential to forward movement here as we decide what sort of offerings to offer and how to shape them. If you don't want to do it right now, that's fine. You'll also get a link to it in the follow-up email where you will get a recording of this session as well. So with that, let's say thank you, Jay. This is wonderful. I really appreciate you. Always a pleasure. And thank you, everyone, for being here tonight.
Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you learned something and got to play around with makeup. And if you don't like what you did, thank God makeup comes off.
Thank goodness. All right, everyone, stay safe, be well, and we'll connect again soon. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.